Today, we're gonna smoke some chicken breasts in my Masterbuilt MPS 230 smoker. This is Robert with Pioneer Smokehouses, and you know the drill. This right here is one of my favorite propane smokers that I've ever used. And the reason is because it has the two doors. So you have the large door where the food goes in and the small door to maintain the wood chips without letting out all of that wonderful smoke and heat. So if you're quick, you won't see hardly any noticeable temperature or smoke loss when you get in and out of there real fast. So let's go ahead and check out the process for getting the chicken ready. Today we're gonna brine it. So let's go ahead and head back in time 3.5 hours ago into the kitchen. I have a family pack of chicken breasts here. I'm gonna go ahead and open those up and lay them out on the cutting board here. And they are some big boys. I was pretty fortunate that I found this one on clearance. And the one thing about them is like I said, they're not small. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at the back of each one of these and then trim off any excess fat. There's not a lot of fat on here, and if I were baking them, I probably wouldn't even trim this at all. I'd probably just go with it. But because I'm putting them in the smoker, the less fat that I have on there, the less mess that it'll generate. And again, it's not gonna be an eating problem necessarily. And you can see that if you look at this really close, you'll see that that's just a small amount of fat. And that's not unusual for the breast around the edges like that, for there not to be a large amount of fat there. When you look at something like the bottom of a thigh, you'll see an awful lot more than that. And this just trims up real simple like that. And then we're all done. I've already done that one there. We'll go ahead and clear that off the cutting board just for convenience. Now the next thing that I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take my meat tenderizer, and you can push this directly into there, but when I'm doing chicken, I like to actually remove this, and this is a safety feature. However, it's not gonna, be the best safety feature in the world, because you have to force that in there and push it down. Now with steak, I find it's not a problem, especially if it's slightly frozen on the edges, and push it down into a cheap round steak, and this will really break up those fibers, especially if you go across the grain like this. Now the primary reason for me to use this is I want to bust a bunch of holes into the chicken skin. So if you look at the close-up here, you'll see that I can just push it in there and get these holes that I'm looking for. I don't need to go all the way through it. I'm just trying to get into the skin like that. I'm gonna do all 3 of these and then we'll be right back. Now we're all done, and I won't have to clean that whole device because of this. I will rinse the whole thing off, but mainly we have this. Now with chicken, you wanna make sure that you clean everything really well. Now, the next thing I wanna mention is the actual brine. And I probably should have started off with this, but about an hour ago, I took some pickling salt and mixed it with 2 cups of hot water, so that way I can get it fully dissolved and stirred in. And then I put it in the freezer. Now it's not gonna freeze in my freezer, but if you have a really, really cold freezer, it's possible. Mine is not that cold. I have a deep freezer outside. After I mixed it and got it all dissolved the way I wanted it, and that was about a 1/4 cup of pickling salt, then I put in a little bit of ice to top it off and put it in there to cool down. It needs to come down in temperature. Now, we're gonna have a shorter brining process. So like when you're brining something like salmon on a wet brine for smoking, you wanna really be careful with it. But for this one, if it's close to 40, you're good. So that is chilling right now. And before I go to mix it in, I will add it with a little bit more ice, so that way we can really get it down. I have about a cup of ice left. Again, always forgetting to make the ice ahead of time. Now we've already got that all prepped. And as for the brine seasoning, I'm not gonna mix the seasoning directly in with the brine. I'm just gonna coat the chicken with the same thing that we're gonna use to cook it with. And that is some Cosmos Dirty Bird cover. Now today, I just have some shrink wrap wrapped around there because with chicken, I like to be a little extra careful. So if you wrap it in shrink wrap or put a glove on it before you start your process and open it, and then you can just sprinkle it on there and you don't have to hassle with it. Some of the recycled containers that I use will end up getting wet because they'll be like the seal won't be as good as it was when I originally got the container, and water will get inside when I'm washing them. So this is one way to eliminate that. Also keep in mind that there is salt in this too. I'm going to tell you one thing. If you don't watch any other part of the video, and this is the only part you watch, the most important thing is that after you're done brining your poultry or whatever you're doing, you need to rinse it off and then re-season it. And the reason is you need to get that sodium level down. Otherwise, your food will taste like a salt lick. So now I've perforated it. I've seasoned the front. Now I'm going to flip it over and I'm just going to lightly season the rib section, and then the meat section I'll season it in a similar manner to that I did to the top. So this is my cup of salt water, and I still have a little bit of the ice cubes left. There was a little bit of ice forming on the top, and that's because of the melted water from the ice started to freeze. Now I'll go ahead and put the rest of my ice that I have available in this measuring cup, and then we will pour the rest of this in here to get it to come down to the final temperature here. And again, you should prepare this a little bit further ahead of time, and even if you're going to do this and you know ahead of time, you could do it the day before and then just leave a couple of cups in here. We don't need a lot of it, we just need enough to completely cover the meat. Now I'm going to use a Ziploc bag today, but I'll tell you what, it would not be a bad idea to use a vacuum seal bag because you might be able to get something a little bit bigger. This is going to be a really tight fit, but we're going to do it this way anyway. I'm going to stuff those in there and I'll be right back. So I have returned, and like I said, it's going to be a tight fit, and you can see how tight it is in there. And I've got the saltwater brine in here. All of my seasoning is in there, and we're going to give this a little bit more of a stir. Make sure that we're getting that ice completely melted in there and that temperature down. Don't have to be perfect, so I'm not going to measure it, but we do want to be as close to 40 degrees as possible. The ice is still melting a little bit. It's not melting very fast, so we know that the temperature is pretty reasonable at this point. I'm going to go ahead and pour that in here. I'm going to try not to disturb the seasoning as much as possible. Now, you can see the bag is not completely full. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to partially seal it, and then I'm just going to rinse the cup out. And pour a little bit more in here so we can get some good coverage on that chicken. Let me go ahead and seal that up. See if we can get some of that air out of there. You can also dip it into a bowl of water, and that will help with that. And the water is nice and cold in the bag, so we did okay. Just a little lower. I'm going to add a little bit more water to that because I want it to come up a little closer to the top. There we go. That's much better. So now I'm going to make sure it's sealed, and then I'm going to kind of mix it around a little bit. And now all that seasoning that was on the top of the chicken breasts is now incorporated with the liquid. So yeah, there's still plenty on the chicken breasts, but there's also plenty mixed in with the liquid. I'm going to work on getting a little bit more of this air out of here, and then I'm just going to toss it in the fridge inside an empty bowl in case it leaks. Don't want chicken juice in your fridge, and the ribs sometimes will puncture the bag, and if that happens, then you just start over again, put it into a new bag, and pour all the liquid into the new bag from the bowl, and you'll be fine. This is going in the fridge for 3 to 4 hours, and then I'll see you out at the smoker. So the brining process is complete, and before I left the kitchen, I went ahead and rinsed these chicken breasts off really well. I'll go ahead and show them to you real close here. And basically what I did is that I just put them in the largest bowl that I had in the kitchen and ran cold water on them, rinsed them off, did that twice, and then I patted them dry with a couple of paper towels and made sure that there wasn't any large amounts of stuff residual on the surface. There's a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it really cleaned up really well. And of course, what we were going for is to get some of that flavor and liquid to penetrate into the breast, so that way it would get a little bit more moisture and flavor inside. So next thing, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna insert a foil tray into the bottom of the smoker. Now, of course, you know that I put this foil tray in there to prevent mess from getting everywhere. And my favorite thing about this is that it makes for real easy cleanup. And you see that I just tossed it on that very bottom shelf there. And then the next thing is I have a grill mat. Now, I think all three of those are gonna fit on one shelf, but I'm not positive. This smoker here, you either wanna smoke up here on the very top, or you wanna smoke right here and go from there. Before we get too far along, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put this thermometer in there. Now, basically what I wanna do is, I wanna get that thermometer near the back. We are hot in here, but we're just over 200 degrees, so I'm gonna be bumping it up a little bit. I'm gonna get that thermometer in here in between two of these racks, and then I'll back it out like that. I wanna try to get that probe close to the middle. And remember that if you get it too close to the back, you'll pick up temperature from the back and it'll misread. So then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna feed this cord up through here and out the vent hole in the back. Everything that you see here is heat resistant, so you don't have to worry about the cord or anything. All you have to worry about is the plug. And once you get the plug outside, you're good. So I'm just gonna leave that sit out here for now, and then after we're done, we'll plug it into the thermometer assembly itself. So we'll go ahead and close that back up and let that do its thing. Now here I have those chickens, and I left them on a rack here so that way they can be elevated and get whatever water is left on there off. Now what I told you earlier was that I'm gonna use the Dirty Bird as my primary seasoning, but I'm also gonna add a little bit of pepper and a little bit of garlic. And the reason is I wanna add a little bit more flavor without adding a bunch of salt. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Now, just for your benefit, I went ahead and did the glove trick on this one. I prefer the shrink wrap myself, but the glove still works, especially on smaller containers. I'm gonna lightly sprinkle some pepper on there. And then a nice sprinkle of garlic on there. And then we'll hit it with our Dirty Bird. That. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to give this about 30 seconds to rest. And the reason is because the minute we put this on here, the salt is going to start drawing up the proteins to the surface and create its own binder. So we won't have to add any liquid to this to get this stuff to stick, and it'll just work. Now, if you wanted to, you could add anything you want. If you like the flavor of mustard, by all means, use mustard. Somebody told me mayonnaise years ago, and I've tried mayonnaise a couple of times on the breast, and if you put a real thin coat on there, that works well. Also, just plain old spray olive oil works really well too. Wait just another couple of seconds. I went ahead and patted in and not a lot came off. So we'll go ahead and do that one more time, and then I'll roll these and I'll be right back. All right, so I've got them flipped over and we're gonna repeat the process, but I wanna go a little lighter on the pepper on this one. Kind of a challenge because the pepper comes out really fast in this container. All right, I'm going to go ahead and flip those back over. So my main concern now is to check for any spots that I may have knocked the seasoning off and then get a light coat right back on top. And mostly what I'm worried about is the dirty bird. I'm not really worried about the other stuff. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to slide that tray out and load these up, and hopefully I'll be able to get all three of them on here. I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and slide that in. And then we're just going to go ahead and close that door. Let me clear this up and I'll be right back. Here we are, and the first thing I wanted to show you is I've gone ahead and plugged in the probe, and you can see the temperature is slowly climbing. We're at 160 right now, and I'm sure it's going to go up a little bit more, but we're still recovering temperature from having the door open so long. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside for now, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. Now I'm going to try to find a spot where it's not too hot that I can keep it, and it looks like this handle will work great because the thermometer is magnetic, so that'll work out excellently. Now I'm gonna grab some wood chips and we'll load that up real quick. So we're down here and I've got myself a bag of the Smokehouse Products blend, and this is just a blend of their flavors that seems to come out really mellow but still has a bold smoky taste to it. I don't know exactly how they blend it out, but I'm really happy with it. I don't think that I would do much different for chicken. If it were like pork, I'd want to get some pecan in there. And of course, I have larger chunks of the pecan wood chips that I would add in there. And if it were beef, I definitely want mesquite to be in there as a primary flavor. But this one here for chicken and fish seems to work out really well. Now, I went ahead and I am using my cast iron pan on a regular basis in here. I do not put any wood chips in here without it. So I pre-seasoned the smoker because it's been a while since I've used it. So I want to make sure that I get this thing seasoned up every time before I go to use it if it's been a long time in between uses. Also afterwards, it never hurts to do that either. Now I have these leftover wood chips and I'm going to go get rid of those really quick. I'll be right back. So this pan is hot, and I will tell you that you do want to preheat your cast iron pans even if you don't use a pre-seasoning. So this pan is hot. You have to use your glove. I'm using my Weber gloves right now, but there's no reason you can't use just any good old pot holder glove. But remember, if it gets too hot, set it down and start over. So go ahead and check this. Looks good. I'm going to set this right in the middle as close as I can. And I did give that a little shake to make sure that the wood chips were mixed around. Go ahead and close that up. And now I'm going to raise the temperature a little bit, and then I'm going to stay out here and babysit it. As soon as I know that it's smoking good, I'll turn the temperature down and watch where we're at. Typically, you need to have the wood chips and the smoker above 170 to get them to smoke, and with the cast iron pan, just a little bit more. So if you're trying to get a lower temperature smoke, use a foil pan or just a standard pie pan, pie tin will work just fine. But don't use anything that's non-stick. That surface will release fumes, and you don't want that in your food. So it's been about 5 minutes, and I have noticed that we are starting to get a little bit of smoke off of the pan. So it's not really going to be enough for you to notice, but it was coming out just a little bit and a little bit off the pan, and it's starting to heat up back here pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you this, and we're at 203 on that shelf and still rising. I did raise the temperature just a little bit on the propane setting. What I'm going for here is close to 325, but I'm going to work my way up there, and the reason is to get the skin the way I want it, I need to be in the 325 or higher range. But also, I have the Searzall right over there, and it is waiting for the perfect opportunity to sear that skin up as soon as we get it cooked and smoked the way we want it. So let's go ahead and take a little bit longer break. For me, that's probably going to be about an hour, but for you, it's only going to be 1 second. Oh, hey there. I took one of the breasts off because it was running a little long on the cook. And now I'm using the Searzall to get this skin a little crispy. I did the first half of it without you, but I did want you to see the finish. So basically moving it nice and slow around the chicken. We don't want to hold it in one spot because we don't want it to burn, but we want to get that nice, yummy, crispy skin. And this really is one of the best ways to do it. I think we're all done there. Now, I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a little bit of color right in there and then a little bit of brown all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and get that closed really fast and then tell you where we're at. So basically, we ended up running a little bit long. What happened was that when I put the pan of wood chips in there, the temperature dropped. And I was able to run the temperature at about 250 without it igniting. Any higher, and I think that the wood chips would have just caught on fire. And so I kind of stirred them around a little bit to keep an eye on them really quick, and they were fine. Now, I did put the probes in there, and we're looking at about 155 internal temperature right now. So we are really close to being acceptable here. Now, there's all different kinds of safety temperatures that you want to get your food to be safe to eat. Of course, 165, I think, is the standard guideline. I personally, as long as I get enough time at a particular temperature, time over temperature kills. And I like to make sure that I'm in a certain range for a certain amount of time to kill the bacteria. Oop. Let too much heat out, so have to reset that. So I recommend that you follow the FDA website advice and do that, but do not go over 168 degrees or you'll end up with dry chicken breast, and nobody likes dry chicken breasts. So we're going to let that go ahead and roll, and then we'll be right back. So I'm trying to rush this before it gets dark out, and I went ahead and took the smaller of the two of those chicken breasts out, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut it right down the middle. I normally wouldn't do that. I would normally cut the the loin off and then make it into pieces, but I'm going to take a piece right out of the center here. So after I pulled it out, I did let it rest for a few minutes, but probably not long enough. So what I want is I want you to see this and see that it's really juicy. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it up here so you can get a look at that. And look at that right there. When I cut it, the juice comes out, and look how soft and moist looking it is. And it temped out at about 166. That's what we were going for. I'll say that the skin is still not as crispy as I wanted it, but it was close until I let it rest. I'm going to bring that up one more time because I want you to get a good look at it. I got to say, that this tastes really, really good. I think not adding the extra dirty bird and putting in the pepper and the garlic really kept that salt level down. I'm super sensitive to salt, so if you're not, I don't think it would have mattered, but for me, I am so sensitive to it that this really makes a difference. That is really good, and with all this juice running around, why waste it? The total cook was about 3 hours, which is longer than I wanted. And the brining process was a little over 3 hours, I think 3.5 officially. And what happens is that when you put that pan in full of wood chips, the temperature inside drops. So you dial in your temperature, you get it right where you want it, you go get your chicken out of the brine and rinse it all off, you put the pan of wood chips in, and then the temperature goes down by 75 degrees. And it really slows down your cooking process. Now this gauge here is a little low. I put in one on the back and then I use the electronic one there. And I trust the one on the back more than anything, to be honest. But I was having a hard time balancing out that temperature to get it just where I wanted it. At the end of the process, I did raise it up to 350 to kind of make sure that it was moving along. So the total cook time, 3 hours. And that included the lower temperature smoking for the first hour. So again, I do like this smoker. This is great. I think it's a perfect portable camping for like a long road trip or something like that. Or if you're gonna do something where you want to do a cold smoke where you just want to run it without the temperature altogether, I find it works really well for cold smoking cheese because you can just put in a pellet tray down in the bottom before you go to bed and it works great. So if you saw anything you like in the video, you'll find the affiliate links below. I will get compensated for that, but that won't cost you anything extra. Most of them are for Amazon. You'll find things like this smoker and these wonderful knives on there. There's an article below for this review on this smoker and also a tips and how to use article below. So check both of those out on the website. And thanks for watching. Have a great day.